Good morning. The Committee on General Government Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. Today is Tuesday, December 1st. The time now is 9 o'clock. Welcome to everyone connected by Zoom and those tuning in via television or the YouTube channel. Thank you for your patience and for accommodating the Zoom platform while we maintain social distancing mandates. Notice for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on November 20th, and again on Friday, November 27th. Today we have two on the agenda. We have Bill 340 and 404. Bill 340-35 COR authored by Senator Regine Bescou-Lee, co-sponsored by Speaker Tina Rose Munoz-Barnes, myself, Senator Kelly Mars Taitano, Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator Jose Pito, Senator Talina Cruz Nelson, Senator Therese Terlai, and Senator Will Castro, and I expect to see Jim joining on this group. An act relative to the issuance of unconditional cash payments to eligible Guam residents under a state of public health emergency due to the coronavirus disease, COVID-19 outbreak, to be known as the Recovery, Income Support, and Empowerment Act of 2020. I'd like to introduce my colleagues that have joined me this morning, and I have Senator Will Castro. We have the author of the bill, Senator Regine Bescou-Lee. We have Senator James Moylan, Senator Amanda Shelton, and Senator Tello Taitagui. And I thought I saw somebody else, but we'll introduce them as we go along. And we also have currently on the Zoom that's on is the Director of Revenue and Taxation, the Director Daphne Shimizu. Okay, the general rules of conduct, the rules of this Zoom is hosted by my staff and will mute all Zoom participants until called upon by me. Members of the committee and or non-committee members wishing to speak may indicate the desire to meet through the in-app chat feature. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by me before speaking and begin by staff stating their name for record-keeping purposes. When called to speak, please ensure that you are unmuted. Committee members will be allowed to pose a question to an individual testifying. Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal from the public hearing by my host. Please ensure that your video remains on throughout the hearing. Participants must be visible at all times and not engage in any other activity during the hearing. You got to drink coffee or eating a snack, I have no problem with that. Failure to maintain visibility may cause your removal from the meeting live stream. I remind my colleagues that we do have another bill after this bill, Bill 404, and hopefully we'll be able to get to that before we go into session. I would like to ask Senator Regine Bescou-Lee to provide an opening statement to Bill 340.
Buenas and Hafide, Mr. Chair and colleagues, Siduos Maasi, Mr. Chair, and to the committee for revisiting this piece of legislation at a time when many on our island are very uncertain of what assistance programs might be available in 2021. When we first introduced Bill 340-35 entitled the Recovery, Income Support and Empowerment, or RISE Act of 2020, the government of Guam, this body included, was really scrambling to try to find solutions to the tens of thousands of our families who have lost income at the onset of this current public health emergency. And many in our community criticized those of us in public service for not acting quickly enough to proffer local programs that gave direct assistance to those who were laid off or furloughed. And with the benefit of hindsight, I feel that now is the right time to plan for the near future and to give the governor locally enacted options in the event that Congress fails to offer federal funds in January, or in the event that GWA receives a reduced federal subsidy later in the year. That is the safety net that we can enact through Bill 340, the proactive plan, because there still might be a point down the road when our families can't afford to wait for the next wave of help from Washington. It's important to acknowledge that so many of our colleagues who've been working day in and day out since the start of this pandemic for a way to offer locally funded economic relief to suffering families while we waited for assistance. And the desire to really help those who have had their earning power decimated or completely eliminated is totally unanimous in our body. For my part, I am committed to supporting whatever locally funded program or strategy that we can come to a consensus on. So I continue to be thankful to you, Mr. Chair, and to my co-sponsors for all of your support for the RISE Act, namely Speaker Tina Munoz-Barnes, you, Mr. Chair, and Senators Kelly Marsh-Taitano, Amanda Shelton, Pito Terlahi, Vice Speaker Talina Nelson, Senator Therese Terlahi, and Senator Will Castro for extending your willingness to rally behind this measure. It's my intention to amend Bill 340 to fund this program in the current fiscal year by allowing the use of FY 2021 general fund, or if there is a consensus among the body, current year special fund revenue, or any available CARES Act funding. This relevant portion is section 4 of the bill, and that's found on page 3. For the benefit of the public, this measure allows the governor to transfer up to $15 million from any government account to pay for locally funded financial assistance, which can potentially help up to 30,000 families with a $400 or $800 assistance check. This bill limits eligibility to taxpayers reporting less than $40,000 in income for single filers and $80,000 for joint filers, and grants $400 to eligible single filers and $800 to eligible joint filers through the Department of Revenue and Taxation. If the professionals at DRT find the method workable, and I want to thank the director for being here with us this morning, Bill 340 allows for the payments to be made electronically. And while this may require more administrative work, it certainly can help decrease gathering at financial institutions and post offices, as we've seen before. It is my hope that this $400 or $800 check can be counted on to help our families bridge the gap until the next federal stimulus law, or it can be something to help save for balloon payments on rent, utilities, and loans. Now, Mr. Chair, to be frank, 15 million will not be enough to grant everyone who filed a tax return in 2019. It may not be enough to even cover everyone who made less than $40,000 a year. And that's why I introduced language in the substitute version before us to make GovGuam employees and federal government workers ineligible for this aid in order to limit the number of recipients to about 30,000 filers. This proposal wasn't made casually, and it definitely rubs some people for being disqualified the wrong way. But I really stand by this decision. It's not an easy task to find $15 million in this cash-strapped fiscal year. So I don't believe it's responsible to increase the cost of this assistance program, even though I know that we all wish we could afford to help every single person. So for us in government service who have not had our livelihoods impacted nearly to the degree of our neighbors and family members in the private sector, I really believe that we should check our privilege and sit this one out. Whether you're classified or not, the heart of what we do is public service. And with less financial burden on our shoulders and so little available resources locally, the right way to serve the public is to target local assistance to those most in need. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I again want to thank you so much for revisiting this bill, because while some of the circumstances have changed since it was first introduced, it's only a matter of time before our people will be in need of some additional help. and our government should be ready and able to act when that moment comes.
Thank you, Senator Lee. I'd like to also recognize one of the co-sponsors, Senator Teresa Lies, joined us also this morning. We have Director Daphne Shimizu. If you'd like to testify, ma'am, on behalf of the bill, for or against, either direction. Ma'am.
Hafide, Honorable Senator Agustin, Chairman, Committee on General Governmental Operations, Appropriation, and Housing, and also Hafide to all of the senators present today, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, Senator Therese Terlahi, Senator Tello Tidegui, Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator James Moylan, and Senator Will Castro. Thank you for having me today so that way I can speak on this particular bill, which I believe has been termed RISE. Of course, this particular bill was introduced back in April, and that at that time in April 8th, 2020, of course, the CARES Act had basically just passed. And also at that time, we had not had some programs like we currently do have of the EIP that's been running now for about 8 months. And also we have the Atsude Imengafa Help for Families program as well, that we've been running for since we had opened up the application period, I believe back in September 29. And so, we have learned a lot from this past year in terms of how to run such type of program. I think that one thing I did want to mention, Senator Agustin and also Senator Lee, is that regarding a program like this, and I was reviewing this again, it's been a while since this bill was introduced, so I had to refresh my memory. We have learned from Atsude Imengafa, and I believe and one of our recommendations perhaps could be that we can look at some of the language in the Atsude Imengafa Help for Families rules and regs. I think that is going to be important. Now, what is important to understand, and this was something that was brought up by Senator Luis Muña when the Atsude Imengafa program was being discussed, is that with regards to a local program like this, because, rev and tax, we do process income taxes, right? But we have to separate a local program from a federal program. And Senator Muña did bring that up back in, I believe, when, of course, the legislature was in committee of the whole and Atsude Imengafa was being discussed. So the process to do such type of a program is going to be, again, similar to Atsude Imengafa, where we're going to have to receive people's documents and also requests for information so that way we can, confirm that people are eligible. But we are not able to access people's income tax information without their consent. And so again, that's something that we've worked on with regards to Atsude Imengafa. And I wanted to make sure I pointed that out again. I think that the language in the rules and regs, we had worked very hard on the language there. And so if there's any specific recommendation, I think that in terms of the language, it'll be good to look at that. We did in the rules and regs lay out a lot of things. We laid out eligibility. We laid out, of course, the mechanism for filing. We laid out exactly what people were supposed to file so that way they could be eligible. There was deadlines that were set, of course, as indicated, and I know Senator Tello Tidegui and also Senator Shelton were very critical in the AIM program and making sure that Rev and Tax had sufficient time to get the program up and running. And so, I think that in terms of the timing as well, it's going to be critical. We are coming to the end of the year and wanted to mention that, of course, we're running not just AIM, but also we're continuing to run EIP. When we get to January, we're also going to be working to start receiving 2020 tax returns. And so we're going to be working to process that. So, our workload is a bit high. I know that there is a section of the bill, which is section 3 on page 2, which also speaks to a date, which is December 31, 2020. And it basically states that there is no unconditional cash payment that shall be made or allowed under this act after December 31. I did want to mention, perhaps if this bill is going to be, is going to move forward, that, maybe we can revisit the timeline that was utilized for Atsude Imengafa, where we had, I believe from the time that we had opened up the implementation period, which was September 29, we have all the way up until March 31, 2020. So there is some time involved, and it allows for us to be able to do programming, to go through and do processing, and also because, again, this is not like the economic impact payment program where we just go directly to your tax return and we utilize that data directly. We have to go through the process of actually receiving an application form, just like we did with the GWA and EPA. And I believe that those are the items which I wanted to bring up. Also, Senator Lee, excuse me, I'm sorry. I know that you mentioned the issue or the item with regards to receiving payments electronically. That's something that, of course, we have looked at, and our team has looked at that in terms of, moving toward making payments even for refunds electronically. That's something that's not outside the realm of being done, and we've talked with our IT vendors regarding that. Again, we're going to have to work to make sure that we develop a good process, that people, receive the payments properly, and that we know what to do if people have a bounce payment and things like that. So I believe that our team is capable definitely of running such program. However, I just wanted to make sure I bring up these points, of course, in terms of human resources and in terms of, what's going to be involved. Likely we're going to have to do overtime. And again, the time frame within which to do it, that should be considered. And, of course, we respectfully request for consideration on those points from the body. And really, these are the points that I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shimizu. I'll work with Senator Lee on those proposed amendments so we can work that out and we can make it work and be consistent with what was already passed. I would ask my Senator Lee, do you have any questions for Ms. Shimizu? And I think there's another senator will be joining us very soon. And I think that's Senator, she was, and that's okay. Anyway, go ahead, Senator Lee.
Mr. Chair, I'll actually allow time for my colleagues to ask any questions of Director Shimizu, but I do want to thank her so much for bringing those points up, and we'll certainly work with you to make those amendments to the bill. Thank you so much, Director.
Thank you. Senator Tello, I see you first up there. You have any questions on Daphne? Go ahead and unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. Good morning, Daphne. Good to see you. Okay, good. Okay, there's a recent, how much paid out the program, many taxpayer covered? Well, the question I have for this program here is, per the BBMR's physical note, the intent of Bill 340 may be mute as 20 million was prioritized by the governor for the program Salapi due to Tautau. So how much was paid out for the program and how many eligible taxpayers were covered?
I apologize, but I'm not familiar with program in Salapi. That was run by DOA and Public Health, but I can work to get those numbers to you, Senator Tidegui. Okay. Let me see if I can work to get that for you.
Okay. Well, then you might not know if Adelup is in the position to continue the program without legislation. Do you know if their plans are to continue this program? The program Salapi, yeah.
With regards to program in Salapi, it's my understanding that the application period had ended, and that also I think people's opportunity to submit their documents, that was back in, I'd like to say around summertime maybe, and please excuse me if I'm wrong. I'm actually trying to message right now to find out how much has been paid, but I believe the application period for program in Salapi has already ended.
Okay, is there any intentions, did you hear through Adelup if they plan on extending this at all? Or the need to extend? Okay. Yeah, if you could let us know.
Let's stick with Bill 340 so we can move on.
If you could let us know, Daphne, greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My point is, we're putting together another program. I mean, we have a $15 million, what they told us it would cost like $15 million to provide for the Law Act, the one where the additional funding for unemployment. And we don't have that money right now currently. So that's $15 million. This is for the unemployment insurance program. And now we're looking at, trying to fund something that there's just no way we have any funding for at this point. Later on in the future, we're going to be cutting. We're not going to be, passing out funding. We're going to have to be cutting, our budgets because of the issues that in front of us due to COVID. But it does matter on these other programs because this is something that the governor can do without legislation. She has been doing this without legislation. So that's why I'm just wondering if they're planning on continuing what already they have in place by adding another layer of another program to come out and be discriminative on where you work and to be able to get this kind of funding. That's not fair. It shouldn't be where you work. It's what how much you receive. I mean, if that's what I heard earlier in the discussion. So, I just don't like putting out false hope to the public who's watching this, and this should have been done a long time ago. I mean, Senator Jean had this bill at the very beginning in the middle of the year. So I appreciate the intent of this bill when it should have been put in a long time ago. But now it's kind of late in the ball game, and I just, I'm voicing my concerns about it, which is my right to do so and to say how I feel about it. But, I also want to commend her for putting out this bill out in the middle of the year when it should have been put out a long time ago. People needed that money then. But we also have to realize the situation we're in right now. And I just don't want the public to think that, this, because we're going to get calls, Mr. Chair, left and right. Once everybody hears about this, it gets in the paper, everyone's going to call our office and wanting this funding. And I just don't want to put out false hope out there.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Senator Tello. And my phone is open for everybody to call. Senator Amanda, do you have any questions, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Director Shimizu, for being here this morning to give us more information on the bill. I know we learned a lot from the Dude Mangafa program and how DRT really stood up to make that program work and to execute it. And we're so thankful for that. So there were lots of lessons to be learned there that we can apply here to this bill. And I know I'll work with the author of the legislation to make it happen. And I want to also commend the author of this legislation because I feel that this is something that we need to continue to work on. People have not stopped calling to ask for different types of assistance that they can avail of during this time. People are still struggling, and people will struggle far into 2021, and we are very aware of that. So I wanted to give the author an opportunity to discuss some of the requirements again for us of who is eligible for this program based on the bill. And I know we don't know exactly right off the top of our heads. We don't have anyone from GWA here, but I know that these requirements are a little bit different from the program and Salapi program. So Senator Lee, if you would break it down for us a little more.
Sure. If you could just give me a second, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to pull up the bill and make sure that I...
All right.
So if you want to move on to somebody else to ask another question, maybe of Daphne, and then if you can come back to me if you don't mind, Senator Shelton. Okay.
Okay, Senator Castro, do you or Senator Amanda, do you have a follow-up question? If not, I'll ask Senator Castro to go ahead and ask questions.
Oh, please go ahead, Senator Castro.
All right, Senator Castro.
No questions. Just want to commend the prime sponsor of the bill for the opportunity to work with you on this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator Castro. Senator Therese, do you have any questions of Ms. Daphne? Unmute. Unmute, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Daphne, for your testimony this morning and your assistance with all these programs. So yes, things have changed since this bill was first introduced, and just wanted to follow up. So this talks about using FY18 tax returns. I mean, sorry, not FY18, but 2018 tax returns, or if they didn't file a 2018 tax return, a 2019 tax return. And I'm wondering if you still find that to be appropriate, or should that be like 2020 tax returns? Because I'm thinking that the bulk of the financial impact that we're trying to address is what happened to them during calendar year 2020, tax year 2020. So we want to see those whose income have dropped or, is below this number during that year. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Just want to say Senator Terlahi for that question. I think it's a great question. Of course, to process returns takes time. And I think that one thing that's going to happen, of course, we do not start receiving 2020 tax returns until the IRS begins to do so. Usually that's around the 27th or 28th of January. And so if 2020 tax return is going to be utilized, it may be a little bit challenging in terms of processing. What I think that I just wanted to maybe share what we did with the Economic Impact Payment Program. And as we were working to negotiate, I guess, the implementation program requirements and criteria with the IRS and the Treasury, we had pointed out to the Treasury and to the IRS general counsels and team members that, rev and tax and the insular areas, we're primarily a manual processing we have primarily a manual processing system, unlike the IRS, which has probably 70 to 80 and now probably even more in terms of online filing. We actually, prior to this public health emergency, we were at about 12 to 1,500 income tax returns that get filed out of 70 to 80,000 altogether. So a very, very low percentage. Of course, we're looking to try to increase that. And I think perhaps one thing to consider is if the 2020 tax return is going to be used, it may cause some delays. And that's something that we knew would happen when, or if we were required to stick with the 2019 primarily for EIP without the language validly filed, right? So, what we ended up doing was the language, if you look at our FAQs for the EIP, states that if we would use a validly filed 2019 tax return, and if there was no validly filed and processed 2019 tax return, we look to 2018. What I think about utilizing 2019 and 2018, again, which, of course, the body may wish to consider, is that a lot of those may have already been filed. And so then in terms of the actual processing and trying to get the payments out, it may cause or help to speed up the process. If we wait for 2020 again, although a lot of people, the ones especially who receive refunds will file like January, February, March, April, again, it may take time and it'll take time for us to process. And so you may see some delays if 2020 is used strictly. I don't know if perhaps the body may want to have language which states 2020 or 2019. And again, that's something that you may wish to revisit. But I do actually, again, want to suggest that, looking at the Azudia Mangafa rules and regs, which we actually put together, the language there, our team worked very hard to make sure that we identified the areas that we thought were critical. And so I think that looking at the returns, that information on the Azudia Mangafa rules and regs would be very helpful. But again, to use 2020 may just cause some delays because of the processing. And of course, we get very, very busy in the beginning of the year.
All right. My concern was, yes, whether we're going to catch those who are in greatest need because of what happened to them in 2020. I understand for processing. They talk about, and I think, the authors in her introduction this morning discussed, like a kind of contingency if we don't get federal funds or if we don't, there's not another federal stimulus or the CARES is not extended, things like that. But the bill itself says shall, so the contingency is really not built in there. It kind of mandates it. It looks to me like you have to do it. But if we could just talk about the funding sources that are cited here. So the bill says fiscal year 2020 general fund appropriations or special fund appropriations from 2020. I think the author this morning introduced it and said she wants to amend it to say 2021, the current fiscal year's general fund or special fund appropriations. So the fiscal note that we received, Mr. Chair, from BBMR is dated May 2020. I think it's severely outdated, absolutely not useful for our purposes here. We have no way to tell, and even in this fiscal note, they did not tell us whether these amounts are available from these funds or not. They really didn't say anything. All they said was the intent of the proposed legislation may be moot, as they're government's already in the process of issuing such payments. It doesn't tell us what is the validity of using any of these as a choice for funding. And so I have the same questions, of course, for, if we change it to FY21. If we can get, is there anyone here today who can testify as to, whether there are general fund appropriations available in FY21 for these purposes? Because we just went through a budget season where we were told no money available. We were cutting agencies left and right. So I want to know if are there any general fund appropriations available? Mr. Chair, I don't see BBMR or DOA again. And so I don't know, does OFB have an answer to that? Is OFB, yeah. The fiscal note from OFB is also dated April 2020, even earlier than BBMR. So I don't know, those are the ones I have available to me, unless there's another one available, more updated.
Senator Therese, we'll work with BBMR and OFB to give you an update. Do you have any other questions you wanted to pose to to Daphne?
Yes, I do. Okay, so then the bill talks about two other funding sources. One is, it looks like the rainy day fund. And I'm pretty sure that in the FY21 budget, we have no rainy day fund that's being set aside. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
That's correct.
All right, and then the last choice calls for any funds received pursuant to a certain section of Title V. It looks like this is the Guam war claims. And so I'm wondering if Daphne has any input as to, do we have a balance in the Guam war claims fund?
Apologies, Senator Terlehi, that's not something that I'm aware of. That's more, I believe, DOA and BBMR. So please excuse that I don't have that information.
All right, no problem. So Mr. Chair, I'm just raising that concern that they're not here again to tell us whether, we're here to have a hearing so that we can determine whether this is feasible or not. And again, no one has any objection, I think, I certainly don't, to giving out additional aid. It's available. I think, now this morning they're talking about adding on CARES as a source of funding for this. And I guess I would like to know what is the balance of the CARES money? Because when I asked BBMR at our last session whether there was any CARES money that's left over to pass to public health, they said absolutely not. There's not a single more, additional dime is going to go to public health. And so I just want to know, what is the balance of that? We need to know the facts. And or if we allow CARES to go through this program, maybe that is a good idea. If we're going to take it from something else, then I'd like to know what that would be. Yeah, I'm hoping it's not going to be the $450,000 that they've now said public health is going to receive. So just want to make sure that type of thing, Mr. Chair. And then, Daphne, so the main question I wanted to ask you was about, I don't want this program to interfere with tax refunds. So, is your being mandated to process this program, let's say it, in January, because like I said, we heard this morning about contingencies on, what Congress does. That might be, as not until January. So let's say it starts in January. Would that interfere with your processing of tax refunds to have to process this program as well? Or your payment of tax refunds, which I'm very concerned that we haven't paid out all the tax year 2019 tax refunds either. You've processed many of them. So I think the processing is not an issue, but the payment of them, they seem to be not up to date.
Okay, and thank you, Senator Terlehi, again for that. And thank you also for pointing out, of course, as I mentioned earlier, when we get into January, it becomes very busy because we're trying to process tax returns that we start receiving. And we do make sure that we, try to get returns processed as quickly as possible. Usually we are during the beginning part of the year, actually for the majority of the year, our team ends up having to do a lot of overtime because that's the only way that we're able to really get things going and make sure that we, are able to process and get things timely done. So, of course, to run another program similar to what we found with the Zuriam and GWA, it is challenging. Again, if we are able to, if this ends up being replicated or similar to what Zuriam and GWA is like, then it's going to entail us reviewing documents, and that will be, that will take time. I do have to share. I'm not sure about the volume of work that's involved in this. I will definitely have to go back and look at that. Of course, again, as I mentioned, it's going to be important that perhaps the time frame to get this completed be considered, and also, of course, the application period as well. It is going to be challenging. I will have to share that, and I want to make sure that it's clear. But, of course, our team has done our best to work to, process based on what's required by the law. And if this is what, of course, the body ends up, pushing forward, and then, of course, we're going to make sure we do our best to follow the law. But it is going to be challenging, again, as we get into the beginning of next year. In fact, of course, there's going to be programming involved. There's going to be applications that have to be put together. But again, that's why I suggest that if we utilize Zuriam and GWA perhaps as a baseline, then that would be helpful, because we already have a process set for that. Not to say that the programming and other things isn't going to take time. So, again, there is going to be some delays. I really have to get back to my team and work to evaluate. I do know that for sure the date of 12/31/2020, which is in the current bill in its current form, is not going to be sufficient for us to get this out. Definitely, we're going to have a system where there's a time period for the application period, and then also and then we're given some consideration in terms of the payment time.
Yeah, no, I agree. At December 31, that the payments shall be made by that date seems unrealistic at this point. But what about the amount of 15 million that's proposed in this bill? Can you tell if we used FY18 calendar tax year 2018? Under these parameters, would it be 15 million? Is that accurate?
And I apologize because I have to revisit. I'm not sure. I need to go back to the fiscal note, and I need to make sure that we revisit it again. It's been a little bit of time, so please excuse me that I don't have that information readily available. I'd like to think that from year to year, especially from 2018 to 2019, that, perhaps unless there was some significant change in somebody's tax situation, that generally people are usually in about the same tax bracket from year to year, again, unless there's some significant change. So, generally, I don't have that number, ma'am. I don't have the number. I will have to get back to you, Senator Terlahi.
Yeah, so you should be able to calculate that for calendar year 2018, how many taxpayers would fit, even maybe 2019 with all that you've processed so far, but we don't know that for 2020 tax, if we're going to use that. All right, but we are expecting, again, that the changes or the people in need are those who were severely impacted during calendar year 2020 because of COVID. At least those are my goal. What about the amount? So we're talking about using local funds, again, not necessarily CARES. I guess there's going to be a proposed amendment to put CARES in here, but right now it's all local funds. Is this how much tax refunds are still pending for tax year 2019? I don't have the report in front of me, but.
I apologize, Senator Terlahi, I don't have that number. I can pull up hold on, if you want me to, I could pull up the refund liability report. Just give me a second.
The last I checked, it was still a pretty large liability. And I just want to make sure that this is not going to impact our ability to pay those out with local funds. Yes. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll wait now.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Senator Moylan, do you have any questions, sir? You wanted to pose?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. The questions
All right.
were my colleague are good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Senator Lee, you have a follow-up on Senator Amanda's question. If you could please answer that, I appreciate it.
Yes, and I thank Senator Shelton for raising that question, giving me an opportunity to clarify. So on page 2 of the bill, it lays out the eligibility. And so for the purposes of this act, an eligible individual means any individual who's filed a return for their first taxable year beginning in 2018, provided that 1, the eligible individual's adjusted gross income shall not exceed $40,000 for an individual, or $80,000 in the case of a joint return. And we continue on with the additional eligibility that the eligible individual shall not be an employee of the government of Guam or the federal government at this time, at any time during the taxable year. So we know that government employees have not necessarily had the same impacts as the private sector. And so I just want to clarify that for my colleagues. We all know that that's a fact. And so excluding this group that has, continued to be paid for their work and their service, it was one of the things that we decided to add into the substitute bill. And so I did want to, just before we wrap up, Mr. Chair, ask Director Shimizu if she would be comfortable if we mirrored the application process that we found in Ajuda Imangafa program. Director Shimizu, would you support passing the measure without first asking DRT to promulgate separate rules for RISE, since it's a similar program? And if so, can you provide the committee with specific provisions that you might feel comfortable with enacting through this bill without an additional rulemaking process, since we've kind of already been through that with AIM?
Well, I can definitely provide you with I want to share, we had gone through a couple of iterations in the rules and regs for Ajuda Imangafa. And if you recall, Ajuda Imangafa first became law back in June. However, there were certain items that we had recommended to make changes to, so that way, of course, it can address some of the issues that we had brought up. And so that's why, again, I believe it didn't become law again until September 14, and that was the amended Ajuda Imangafa. I believe that our team had spent a lot of time to make it as perfect as it can possibly be. I'm not sure of what is involved. I of course do not want to delay any process, but it is always helpful to have, laid out very clear rules and regs. And I will share our team. I really am grateful to our team who's working on Ajuda Imangafa, but they did a great job in laying out the rules and regs, because again, we wanted to be very clear. So, of course, again, if the body is able to, if this is something that ends up moving forward, because of course, this is what the legislature is able to pass, then, we do believe that it's important to have a process, a very clear process, like what is involved in Ajuda Imangafa. That's going to be very critical. And again, that's why I mentioned, maybe replicating the rules and regs, perhaps, of course, adjusting it for whatever it is that is specific to this, like the income thresholds, and of course, changing out dates is going to be important. But definitely, I think looking at that, because some things that we address in Ajuda Imangafa as well as making sure that you're a resident of Guam, making sure, of course, we learned from the EIP program where we had received applications from people like from Greece, and we wanted to make sure that the local law for Ajuda Imangafa, that it did actually address the issue and make sure that we require people to submit documents that would, make sure that they're actually residents of Guam, that it's a people here on Guam that are benefiting. So, I think taking a look at that would be probably helpful. And of course, I could provide that to Senator Lee. I can provide it also to the chairman, and that way he could share it with the body.
Great, thank you so much, Director Shimizu. And yes, I took a lot of notes about, and I'm committed to working with you to include language from these rules and regs in terms of eligibility, a mechanism for filing, some of the deadlines, and you're absolutely right in terms of that December 31st date, we'll have to revisit that as well. So thank you so much for your testimony and for bringing these things to light.
Situasmasi.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Lee, go ahead, and if you want to make your closing, and we'll go and wrap this bill up, and then we'll see all the different amendments that will come in, such as stuff from the items of concern from Daphne Shimizu, and some of the issues that were brought up by Senator Tello, and we're going to close this one. We have Bill 404 still coming up. Thank you. Go ahead, Senator Lee.
Sharon, and again, to this to my colleagues and to our Director of Revenue and Taxation for their questions and their ideas to make this bill the best that it can be. The RISE Act allows the governor to transfer up to $15 million from any government account to pay for locally funded financial assistance. And given our government's current cash challenges, I think the best model to follow is the one that grants the greatest flexibility for finding and using local dollars, and the one that we know has worked in the past. To address the concerns of our good minority leader, yes, this bill was set aside shortly after it was discussed on the floor. And that's because the governor heeded our calls to prioritize federal subsidies for direct financial assistance. But as stated clearly and correctly by our DRT director, the application and disbursement period for Programen Salapi has come and gone. And generally, CARES money cannot be spent after December 30th, 2020. So this bill is being revisited because it is a matter of time, because it's just a matter of time before there's another gap between when people need the money and when Congress may or may not act. So just as Senator Taitegui said, the criticism in April was that we waited too long before planning local aid. And so this is our chance to do that before 2021 comes. So before we're up against the wall and our people are really in need, this is an opportunity for us to act. And this assistance can help families buy groceries while their SNAP or their welfare applications are being processed, or for them to save for balloon payments for rent, for utilities, for loans, because we know that those have been held off during this period. So, Mr. Chair, this bill can help up to 30,000 families with a $400 or $800 assistance check. We were able to develop this model by standing by a decision to make GovGuam employees and federal government employees ineligible for this aid. Yes, this, it might seem unfair, but it also hasn't been fair that while our brothers and sisters in the private sector have been laid off, furloughed, and left to navigate a never before done unemployment program, we in the government of Guam and the federal civil service have been sitting pretty. So getting at least 100% of our pay this entire year. As said earlier, I think those of us who are in public service should really check our privilege and sit this one out. Mr. Chair, the RISE Act provides us with an opportunity to proactively plan to provide our families, provide for our families instead of waiting for Washington. And it provides us an opportunity to provide relief, a safety net for our people as a means to bridge the gap as we wait for aid from Congress. The measure will also go a long way in supporting the governor's very clear directive to stay at home and to really follow the 4 Ws. Our island was already caught unaware once by this pandemic. This body should really commit ourselves to plan and have a local plan so it doesn't happen again. And I ask that as lawmakers that we work together, that we collaborate on this inevitable need while we have the benefit of time. And with that, I want to thank you again, Mr. Chair, for hearing this bill, and thank my colleagues for their comments, and Director Shimizu for joining us this morning.
Thank you. The committee will continue to receive testimony until December 4th. And we'll receive the input from Ms. Daphne. The acceptance of any additional information or public testimony that agenda item discussed, you may submit testimony to the mailroom of the Guam Legislature, Guam Congress Building, or through email at Senator Joe S. and Augustine at gmail.com. I want to thank everyone for attending the public hearing and for providing feedback and suggestions. This public hearing on Bill 340 is now adjourned. It is now 9:51. We'll take a 5-minute recess, and then we will come back to begin on 404. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, and practice social distancing. Thank you. Good morning. Half a day, the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called back to order. Today is Tuesday, December 1st. It's now 10:07. Welcome to everyone connected by Zoom and those tuning in via television or the YouTube channel. Thank you for your patience for accommodating this Zoom platform while maintaining social distancing mandates. Notices for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on November 20th and on Friday, November 27th. The bill will be entertaining this morning is Bill 404-35, introduced by Senator Regine Besco-Lee, an act to add a new section 48104B5 and section 48104E, both of Chapter 48, Title 10, and to amend Section 62104B of Chapter 62, Title 21, all of Guam Code annotated, relative to prohibiting any further use of septic tanks on certain lots located on the groundwater protection zone, regardless of whether said lots are part of parental subdivision. This is the second virtual public hearing. The first public hearing was held on Friday, October 23rd, and there will be a third one on December 9th at 5 p.m. I'd like to recognize participants that will be speaking first. We have Dr. Jensen, we have Michelle Lastimosa, Captain Bearden, we have Senator Simon Sanchez, and Miguel Bordalio from GWA. And Senator Lee, I don't know if you want to do an introduction again on your bill. Ma'am, Senator Lee, if you like, if you can do one, and then we'll begin with the government officials.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Buenas and half a day, everyone. Mr. Chair, I just want to begin by thanking you for heeding the call of the first public hearing on Bill 404 and convening this second opportunity for our private sector stakeholders and government experts to offer their concerns, as well as data and information once again. Because I think the thing that we all agree on, and it's been stated and repeated often since the first hearing, is that we all support protecting the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer, or NGLA. And that's the noble goal of Bill 404 and the three other companion measures aims to accomplish. And so I just want to repeat some plain facts as well, because it's clear that there's still a misunderstanding about exactly what this bill does, and perhaps incorrect assumptions that this bill has a far wider impact than it actually does. As I've said since its introduction, Bill 404 gets rid of one narrow exception that will only affect properties made via parental subdivisions into the future. Today, if you own an acre over the aquifer, you cannot build a septic tank. Today, if you own a half acre on top of the NGLA that wasn't parentally subdivided, you cannot build a septic tank. Second, lawful agreements and permits to install septic tanks over this area that were executed prior to Bill 404's enactment will be grandfathered in. The legal protection commonly referred to as the contracts clause remains in effect for everyone who is playing by today's rules. Now, why are we trying to approve fewer septic tanks over this source of about 80% of our drinking water? It's because scientists who regularly monitor the health of our aquifer have noted an increasing trend in nitrate contamination, which poses health risks and can result in millions of dollars in monitoring, mitigation, and well replacement that will be passed on to GWA's ratepayers. And because untimely widespread contamination of our NGLA will tank our economy and property values and would forever negatively impact the health and environment of Guam and her people. Mr. Chairman, a healthy dose of skepticism and critical thinking when reading scientific reports or listening to subject matter experts is usually a good idea. After all, no one should believe everything that they read. But research conducted on our water production wells shows a very clear and increasing rate of nitrate contamination. And while it is true that our local experts don't know everything about every source of this contamination, It's obvious that septic tanks are a source of nitrate pollution to our aquifer, and it is a plain fact that there have been more septic tanks installed during the course of this research. There has also been discussion about the natural decomposition of vegetation like tangin or leaks from our sewer lines. That these scenarios may also be sources of nitrate contamination, I would like to remind our stakeholders and members of testimony given by WERI at the first hearing. When WERI's Director and Chief Hydrogeologist, Dr. John Jensen said, and I quote, "We see surprisingly little contamination from sewage. Usually when we get contamination from sewage, it's in the aftermath of a typhoon where sewage substations have broken down and stuff is flooded into a sinkhole and goes straight down a shaft into the aquifer," end quote. I also know that with some concerns may not be swayed by my opinions of Dr. Jensen's expertise. So I'd like to offer this quote from my good friend, Senator Jim Moylan, who, when discussing a measure he authored on the floor to lower the fees of limited liability companies last week, acknowledged that it would take a lot of time to fully understand all the business license fees that needed to be modernized, but that, quote, "We shouldn't use this as a means to hold the measure from advancing," end quote. My colleague made this apt point to all of us, that we have the opportunity to address this small piece today. With all of this in mind, including the months and work and years of research put in by Dr. Jensen, Dr. Nathan Habana at WERI, Director Jack Haddock at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, the NGLA Technical Advisory Group, the Guam Waterworks Authority, and the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, among others, we believe that it makes sense to treat parentally subdivided parcels with the same rules that all other landowners abide by when their property sits within the northern Guam Lands Aquifer. Again, all landowners without parentally subdivided lots follow these rules. They are required to hook up to sewer lines, no matter how far away it is, because that's what the government says is best for the aquifer that we all enjoy. Only one subset of landowners enjoy an exception to this rule, and it's a gray area that some experts, including government lawyers, call a loophole. This bill also considers that Guam is in the middle of an economic depression and are currently living in what the CDC classifies as, quote, "large-scale community transmission," end quote, of COVID-19. A drop in access to clean water or a spike in the cost of our water bills would only make this public health and economic crisis worse. Mr. Chairman, this second public hearing is a testament to our commitment to seek more input, to receive more information from our subject matter experts. And we are not aiming to, quote, "cherry pick" the scientific conclusions that we agree with and ignore the ones that we don't. But at the same time, it's not unwise to paralyze ourselves from acting to protect the aquifer simply because we do not know everything about contamination sources. After all, we would be rightfully criticized if our government had no quarantine plan for COVID in March because we didn't know everything about how the disease was spread. Or if we did nothing to test our community because we didn't know everything about how deadly it is. Or if we didn't close schools because we didn't know everything about how it would affect our kids. Or if we didn't put out social or assistance programs for workers and businesses because we didn't know everything about how COVID would affect our economy. We know enough to act. The data is clear. Nitrate contamination is on the rise. A major cause has been identified. This is enough information to act, in my mind, especially because there's so much at stake. I hope that no matter how you feel about this measure, we can all agree that a strong future requires a protected aquifer, because once it's lost, it cannot be replaced. Sizus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lee. General rules of conduct, the Zoom meeting is hosted by my staff and we will mute all Zoom participants until called upon by myself. Members of the committee and or non-committee members wishing to speak may indicate their desire to me through the in-app chat feature. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by me before speaking and begin by stating their name for record-keeping purposes. When called to speak, please ensure that you are unmuted. Committee members may be allowed to pose a question on individual testifying. Questions and testimonies shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing by the host. Please ensure that your video remains on throughout the hearing. Participants must be visible at all times and not engaged in other activity during the hearing. Failure to maintain visibility may cause your removal from the meeting live stream. I'd like to thank my colleagues that have joined us this morning. We have Senator Therese Terlai, Senator Tello Tidegan, we have Senator Jim Moylan. We will now begin with Mr. And I remind the government officials that will be testifying, you have 5 minutes, and please feel free to submit your testimony also. Senator, correction, we will start with Dr. Jensen from the University of Guam, from Weary, sir. If you can unmute, I appreciate it. There you go.
It takes me a while to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try to share my screen here. And I've been asked to speak to the question of what we're seeing in the aquifer, and I've prepared with help from the subject matter expert. I can't take credit for this. My subject matter expert is Dr. Nate Habana, and he has a team of students that have compiled these data. He's been working on it for about 16 years. And I've summarized in 2 pages this Weary Scientific Advisory paper on the occurrence and trends of nitrate in the aquifer. Let me go straight to the pictures. The first map shows the production wells around the aquifer, and these are the concentrations of nitrate in milligrams per liter or parts per million. So between 0 and 1 for the blue, red is between 5 and 10. The map on the other side shows the trends. The triangles that are pointing up show those wells in which the concentration is increasing or has increased over the historical period of record. And the downward pointing triangles, there's just a few of them, show where it's decreasing. The circles show where it's stable or where the trend is flat. And here again are the concentrations of nitrate. So to sort of summarize what's on those maps, there are 64 to 68, depending on how you count them, wells that show increasing trends over the entire period of record. And a good example is M15, which you can see it's pretty tightly clustered around the regression line, which is gives you confidence that what you're seeing is real. And there's another 20 to 16 wells that show a steep increase in the first half of the record, and then have flattened off, but overall show an increase from the start of the record to the end of the record. If you fit a line separately to the first half of the record, you'd get a steeper increase, and then you'd have a flattened increase, or a flattening and no increase. So this indicates that whatever was responsible for the increase in these wells went away about the time of the beginning of the century here, somewhere between 99 and 2003, flattened out. I don't know what that is, and we haven't, that requires a lot of detailed study. Then there's another set of wells, 55 of them, or 38%. So this is about 60% of the wells that you see an increase, these first two, over the period of record. And then there's another 40%, which have been stable the whole time, just flat as a pancake for the whole record. And again, very tightly clustered. And then there are about a half a dozen, or 5% of the wells, that show an interesting decrease over time. So to make sort of a first blush of interpretation of that, I've identified the things that we can say about what's happening that provide us some basis for interpreting what the causes are, and as a first order cause. So you got more than half of 146 wells spanning 30 years that show historical increases, and nearly half show studied ongoing increases. Now, it's well known that both sewage lines and septic tanks can produce nitrate. So the question is, what's responsible for the rise? Well, two facts that are well documented is that during the past 2 decades, GWA has been working to reduce sewage line leakage and has a plan in place for maintaining and continuing the reduction of sewage line leakage. So it's reasonable to assume that over the past 2 decades, whatever contribution has been made by sewer lines has been decreasing. On the other hand, there exists a large and probably growing, carefully chosen, these words are the things that we can stand by. So the number of conventional individual disposal and septic tank systems has been probably growing, and nitrate discharge from these systems can only be eliminated by eliminating the system, either by hooking it up to a sewage line or by replacing it with an individual treatment system that can reduce the nitrate to nitrogen gas and expel it into the air. And of course, those require maintenance too. But so the most likely source in general is the septic tanks, which have been increasing rather than decreasing over these 30 years. So I've probably used up my 5 minutes, and I'll step off the stage with just one last comment. That's as far as we've gotten. We haven't studied things like the correlation between density of septic tanks on this map and the trends in any particular location. But you can study these maps for yourself and sort of frame hypotheses, and that's as far as we've gotten. Future studies might take us into more sophisticated geospatial analysis of the relationships, but the general relationship is more septic tanks, and that's more likely to account for the growing amount of nitrate than sewage lines, given that sewage lines have been repaired over this period and are being repaired. I've got to figure out how to unshare my screen, or maybe the host can do that for me.
All right, now let's figure this out. Trying to clear your screen here, Dr. Jensen.
I see there's a, did that do it?
Okay, there you go. And just to let everybody understand that, number one, we're going to let everybody in on the Zoom, but you're not going to be able to speak. We're going to allow only government officials. Keep in mind that we will recess this hearing until December 9th and continue on the discussion on this bill. We will now move to, we have Michelle Estimosa, please. Michelle, let me see, there you are.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, honorable senators, colleagues, and stakeholders. My name is Michelle Lastimosa, Deputy Administrator for Guam EPA. One of Guam EPA's missions is guardianship over our most precious resource, water. We support the protection, conservation, and management of the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer. About 80% of our drinking water comes from the Northern Guam Lens Aquifer. Thus, any contamination to this resource can lead to health risks and great expense.
Now I'm on.
The prevention of contaminated water and ingestion of toxic chemicals that can cause illness to our citizens is our greatest concern. We are in full support of any legislation that protects our groundwater. We are also sensitive to the use of parental subdivided lots with reasonable, scientifically proven technology, such as on-site water treatment devices, so as not to impede on property owner rights. We agree that and support preventing contamination is far less expensive than cleaning up contaminated groundwater. And we would like to work cooperatively and provide further input in the near future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I apologize.
Thank you, Michelle. We have Captain Bearden. I hope I didn't murder your name there, Captain.
That's correct. You got it.
All right, thank you. Sure.
Thanks. I'd like to share my screen here if you guys don't mind. So this is a study that I performed when I worked up in Saipan. And just as a way of introduction, I'm a U.S. Public Health Service officer. Guam EPA has taken me on as their Chief Engineer and Water Division Director. I worked in Saipan for many years for the Saipan Division of Environmental Quality and also for the Saipan Commonwealth Utilities Corporation. And while I was at the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation, I took all the nitrate data that existed in Saipan and created a map showing nitrate levels. And I want to highlight some things because I think this is relevant to the discussion in Guam. If you scroll down this map here to the two largest unsewered subdivisions in Saipan, you can see here the Cagman subdivision and the Dandan subdivision. These are about 1/4 acre lots, no sewer service, all on septics. These are located in the Marianas Limestone geologic formation, which is the same geologic formation as most of northern Guam. And the way the map is here, the colors grade increasingly to the highest nitrate levels in the form of the red color. And you see this kind of blue outline around the Cagman subdivision and around the Dandan subdivision and other areas. That's about half of the EPA maximum contaminant level for nitrate. And then you see these red dots on the map. Those are individual wells that exceeded the MCL for nitrate. And you can see there's multiple wells within each of those areas that exceeded the MCL. So that means that those wells would not be able to provide water that meets EPA standards that would be dangerous for children and other people that have compromised digestive systems that could allow for nitrite reduction or nitrite conversion to occur, which would result in a potentially fatal illness. And I bring this up because I think this is relevant for Guam. I think this is, we can look at our neighbors to the north in Saipan and see kind of the longer stage result of what happens when you go too far with unsewered subdivision. And we do see this large areas of groundwater there that are essentially unusable. Saipan does use this water, but as everybody knows, nobody drinks the water in Saipan. It's a wonderful thing in Guam that we're able to drink the groundwater. They're not able to in Saipan, partially because of this reason, also because of the salinity. One other thing that this map tells us is areas where nitrate is not increased. And I've heard a lot of discussion recently about whether or not Tangan forest causes nitrate to increase. So we can look around the airport area here in Saipan. We can look around these areas around here. You can look around, and when you go north on the map, you can look in the Marpi area, the Asmatuis area, the Talafofo area, a lot of areas that are covered in Tangan, and they don't see nitrate levels higher than about 2 to 3 milligrams per liter, generally speaking. So our findings in Saipan anyway were that nitrate was not necessarily, elevated nitrate was not necessarily related to Tangan growth at all, but it was very strongly correlated with unsewered development and also agricultural areas. You see this area south of the airport here and on this side of the airport in the south end of the island, those were agricultural areas. And same up in this area here around Cagman. I'll stop sharing this screen unless there's questions. The only thing I wanted to add in addition to that was that we talk about nitrate, and I speak as the chief engineer. Oh, go ahead, is there a question?
Bottom left, does it say mute? There, click mute.
Is somebody asking a question?
No, there's nobody gonna be asking questions at this time, Captain.
Okay, the only other thing I wanted to add was that, EPA uses nitrate not just as a measure of nitrate itself, which can be toxic for infants and other people, but also as an indicator of general contamination with wastewater. And there's a lot of things in wastewater that we worry about that are not measured. There are literally thousands of unregulated compounds that come out of our daily, our homes' wastewater systems on a daily basis. That can be cleaning products, they can be products from your laundry, including PFAS and PFOS. There can be pharmaceuticals and the metabolites of pharmaceuticals that pass through our bodies into the sewage that we have generally increasing indications that those are harmful for human health at very micro levels. So it's more than just nitrate that we are concerned with when it comes to preventing groundwater contamination from septic systems and sewage systems. And that's all I have pending any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Whereas Mr. Miguel Berdalio from GWA, sir, do you have a testimony to provide?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Senators. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you and provide additional testimony. As you know, we submitted written testimony previously in support of the bill to eliminate this loophole and this exception to development rules, which everyone else on Guam has to follow. We believe that WERI's data is clear and the trends support that there is an impact to over 50% of our wells with increasing nitrate levels. There's been some information presented about John Mink's theory about the Tongan, which Captain Bearden spoke about. And I think what hasn't been said yet is WERI did a little more digging into that technical paper and found that the data that Mr. Mink based his information on regarding the relationship between Tongan and the nitrate levels was based on data that was collected by well drillers years before he assembled the study. And it was based on an analyte that is different from the analyte that we are currently using to track nitrate in our wells. And if you apply the conversion factor between the analyte that the drillers used back then and what we're using now, which is on the order of 4 point something, the data line up completely with what Dr. Jensen's data shows. So the Mink bean theory, really, there's no footing to it. There isn't a vast discrepancy here, and the data all supports that nitrate levels are increasing and that the probable causes are septic tanks, as Captain Bearden's paper also shows, and the potential for leaking sewer lines. Now, GWA is doing what it can to address the leaking sewer line issue. We just invested $30 million in repairing the main sewer interceptor over the northern Guam lands, and we've seen a marked decrease in the amount of infiltration into that sewer line, which means it's tight, it's not leaking anymore. And so we're doing our part to address those issues. We also have a program outlined in our 20-year master plan and our 5-year capital improvement program to eliminate septic tanks by expanding our sewer collection system. So we have funding in place to expand the sewer collection system by 5,000 linear feet every year beginning in 2023. Between now and then, we're working on a study to formalize the septic tank elimination program and also to work on the initial designs. and prioritize the areas where we want to put in the first 5,000 linear feet of new collection lines. And we need to do that around the wells that have the highest impacts from septic tanks, which the data clearly shows. So we are doing our part and trying to, that $30 million investment was grant money, which didn't cost the ratepayers anything. And we're continuing to try and prioritize the use of our resources to address this issue, which we feel is important. We also, in our initial testimony, indicated that we support very clearly the use of advanced technology for individual disposal systems. There are products out there that probably do a much better job at removing nitrates. Septic tanks don't do that. Septic tanks and leaching fields don't do that. And that technology is, especially when those systems are installed and not maintained, don't do anything to stem the flow of nitrates into the subsurface. And so we think that those need to be eliminated. And that's why we're doing our part to expand the sewer collection system. That doesn't mean that we think that you can't use an alternative technology that has the capability to remove the nitrates and other contaminants that Captain Bearden spoke of, and we fully support that. But that's not within our bailiwick. Those are EPA regulations, and if they expand the definitions of types of systems that can be used that take advantage of this technology rather than the septic tank systems, we'd be in full support of that. I don't think there's anything further that GWA has to add. We believe that we're doing our part. We're in strong support of this legislation, and we continue to work together with Guam EPA and other constituents in Wary to try and find the best ways to manage our water resources. And we believe this is an important step in doing that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bordallo. Senator Simon Sanchez, do you have anything you wanted to testify on, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I wanted to defer to the other participants. I was involved briefly in the first hearing. I wanted to hear the update from Wary, Captain Bearden, who I now recognize that walks every morning. And I wanted to hear from John Duenas and the realtors. You're wrestling with the same issues we're wrestling with at the CCU and GWA. I wanted to hear Miguel's feedback on it. It is a complex problem, but if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, I'll reserve my time till the end and let others participate. Right. And then I might make some summary observations and comments of my own, if that's okay with you.
All right. We're going to only have 20 minutes left. So we'll probably have very few folks left, and then we will continue on December 9th. I have four of my colleagues that are currently, I see on the screen, I see Senator Therese Terlai, Senator Talo Taidegui, Senator Jim Moylan, and Senator Sabina. Senator Therese, did you want to ask any question of the government officials? That's what you got. My colleagues, be mindful, 5 minutes is all you have to speak, ask questions.
I'd like to hear the other testimony as well, Mr. Chair.
All right, okay. Okay, Senator Tello, do you have anything?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair, as well. I'm just waiting to hear the other testimonies. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Jim, do you have anything? None. Senator Sabina, do you have any questions you want to pose to the government officials?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will now proceed to...
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could just ask a quick question of Michelle Lastimosa.
All right, of Michelle Lastimosa of the EPA. Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Lastimosa, thank you. Thank you to everybody for providing testimony. But if you could provide the committee with additional information about the water treatment systems, what you were speaking about, septic alternatives that you mentioned, I think that would be of great help to our discussion. And just reasserting the fact that there are alternatives to septic that that might address some of these landowner concerns and concerns from our realtors, that there are alternatives out there that can still help us to protect the environment and be able to move forward with some of these parentally subdivided lots. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lee. If I could defer to our subject matter expert, Captain Bearden, to answer that question. He'd probably be the most qualified to answer that question.
Sure thing. Thank you. And thank you in advance, Captain Bearden.
Sure, no problem. Yes, there are numerous alternative advanced treatment systems available for on-site use that have been used for decades throughout the rest of the world and the United States. They're different than a septic system. They don't just have a septic tank and a leaching field. They've got a mechanical treatment system of some sort that replaces the septic tank. And there's a variety of technologies available. We discussed them in great detail over the past year and a half or so with the NGLA working group. We even developed a model for potential permitting of how we would permit these systems, because they do require some maintenance over that which would be required of a septic system. So there's some O&M cost, that's operation and maintenance cost, that a homeowner would have. But there are many of these systems that have been made that work fairly simply. They run almost without any supervision, and our permitting model would require a maintenance contract to make sure these things are working properly. But when they do work, they can reduce nitrate by more than half. In many cases, up to about 80% of the nitrate is removed. And so we had looked at some of that data, and I come up with sort of a general equation, I guess you'd say, that if we normally allow 2 septic tanks per acre, with these systems, if we could guarantee a reduction of nitrate by half, then we would still have the same nitrate input as a half acre lot on a quarter acre lot, basically. But most of these systems can actually perform better than that. So even that would be something that would reduce nitrate levels long-term, compared to allowing septic systems to continue at a quarter acre lot pace, which they're going at right now.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Lee. I will begin with some testimony. We'll begin with Mr. Kyle Dahalik from the Guam Youth Climate Strike. Sir, Mr. Kyle. You got 5 minutes, sir.
Sejus Masi. Buenas and Hafaday, members of the committee, Zan I Manhoban Guahan. Inaan si Kaya Dahilig, who guides I Tanota, I Hanum, Zani Tatatano. My love for the people is grounded in my passion with protecting the natural environment, so that when I decide to raise a family, the same clean air, soils, and waters are available for them. And I am the communications director for the Guam Youth Climate Strike, and we are a youth-centered organization that focuses on elevating youth voices and encouraging youth involvement in the community. We're preparing a future that is sustainable not just for me or you, but for the generations after us. And we all know that hindsight is 20/20, because how can we ever predict such a disaster if we don't ever think long-term? And when it comes to addressing issues, we should always be proactive and not reactive. And I'm glad we're here today discussing the possibility of keeping our groundwater safer. Bill 404 is a protective measure that will ensure that we don't overdevelop our island past the point of regret. And I urge the body, our people, and community to come together to support one another and keep our waters clean and healthy for you, me, and everyone after us. Ang dangkalu na Sejus Masi, maraming salamat po, and kiniso.
Thank you, Kyle. We have Ms. Patricia Bloss. Ma'am, I'm looking for you here. I know you're here. Let's see. Ms. Patricia Bloss. Shows you don't have her picture there, so we're gonna move on to Ms. Pauline Okada. Okay, we're gonna move to Mr. Joseph Lopez. Mr. Lopez, I know, so I see you there. There, sir. If you can go ahead and begin, you've got 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, hopefully, the chairman, senators, and all the other senators and good people, especially Mr. Simon Sanchez. Good to see him on the line. My name is Joey Lopez, or Joseph Lopez Sr. I've been a resident of Guam now for 31 years and 49 days. Guam is our home. My wife and I have 4 boys, 2 that were born here. I've developed property now for about 15 years, various properties, majority all up north. And one of my biggest concerns, this will have a catastrophic, if passed, will have a catastrophic effect on the real estate industry, on homes being constructed, on real estate, on sales, on construction, and so forth. Many of these funds that come in via taxes that drive our economy, workers, and so forth. Is there a way that something could be done, or legislation, to help fund Guam Waterworks in improving the sewer system or the sewer lines and make them available through places throughout North, whereas this aquifer will be affected? And maybe go to the federal government and try to borrow money or get grants and so forth to improve and provide the service. Give Mr. Bordalio, them at GWA, the support financially and plan it out and have a 20 or 30-year plan. Every year, so many miles or so many linear feet of sewer lines will be put in. You have a $100 million facility the military's building right above Tengisan. Why can't we avail as the people for homes around there of that new facility? There's many other things that can be done rather than to just put out this bill, okay, you have less than half an acre, no septic tank. Mr. Bearden talks about systems, great. We, as contractors, we'd love to see them as developers. But many of these systems, Mr. Chairman, are very expensive. They're not $7,000 or $8,000 to put a septic tank in a leaching field. They're very expensive. And what does it do? It drives up the costs. You drive up the costs, there is no such thing as affordable housing. The affordable housing in the state of Hawaii is 744,000 affordable housing. Guam is going in that same direction. So people that are looking for their children or grandchildren to buy a home or help them build a home on property less than a half an acre in the future is very difficult. It'll be nearly impossible to afford it. So I am not in favor of this bill as presented. I think there's other alternatives. And if they have alternatives, then show us. Bring it to the table. Has these alternatives been discussed with engineers on Guam? Are they aware of it? Come together and work out and find a solution, not just ram it down everybody's throat. You have a half acre or less than half an acre, you can't get a permit to put a septic tank. I think that's wrong the way it is. We are dealing with this pandemic. People are going crazy. People are not eating like they should. People can't communicate. People can't travel. There's so many other things that we have to deal with right now with this pandemic rather than something like this. That's all I have. And thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Ms. Pauline Okada, because I don't see Patricia Bloss turned on. So Ms. Pauline Okada, you've got 5 minutes, ma'am, to testify.
Buenas Hofaday, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for hearing me. Yeah, I was just advised about this bill just this morning, and I found it quite interesting. And I do agree with Mr. Lopez's plea that this would have a devastating effect to our economy on the real estate development side. But another thing is that I too, as a landowner, wanting to subdivide my property and not being able to, help my children build on it because I'm not going to be able to put in a septic tank. I'm concerned about what are the alternatives that the government will be able to provide for us if we're unable to, build a septic tank. Maybe those kind of possibilities or options should be available before you move forward and prohibiting such construction. Well, that's just my take. And I hope that you could consider the common landowner or small landowners at that, as well as all the real estate developers. That's it. Thank you for hearing me out.
All right, thank you, Ms. Okada. Ms. Bloss, Patricia Bloss, you are now on, ma'am. You've got 5 minutes, ma'am. Pat? If you can unmute there, Pat, I appreciate it. Ms. Bloss? So you're still muted, Ms. Bloss? Ms. Bloss, we can't hear you. I think you need to turn on your audio there, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, perhaps we could
There.
ask you to log off and log back on, because sometimes that helps.
Well, let's try this one more time. She just needs to connect. Ms. Bloss, you need to connect to your audio. Okay, is she on? There appears you're connecting now to audio there, Ms. Bloss. Let's see. Okay, well, while we're waiting for Ms. Bloss to reconnect through audio, we'll have Donna Miller Taitano. If you would please, you've got 5 minutes, ma'am, if you can, please. And then we'll bring back on Ms. Bloss real quick.
Good morning.
Okay, well,
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Is this Ms. Taitano?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Donna?
Now I can hear you.
All right, go for it.
Yes, now I can hear you. Thank you so much for having this public hearing. I am a concerned property owner from GWA. I would like a reconsideration of this bill, that it be held back for more studies, because currently the bill will prevent myself. I own a property that has no access to any sewage line. I don't even have access to a road, much less a road or a power or water lines close enough for me to even put up a house. And having this bill put up right now without any kind of what is the word, infrastructure built up by the government to ensure that everyone has easy access to this, and which will cause me to have to find the monies to put in a sewage line before I can even put up a house, is unfair. And I would like more studies by Weary and other people who have been studying this, the effects of effluents and things like that from septic tanks, to really happen, so that we have actual data that supports that. I think this bill is too early and it's missing a major component that has to do with actually looking at the current sewage system, which everyone who has watched the development of Guam understand that our sewage system that was put in the 60s is already deteriorating.
Look like we got a pause with Ms. Taitano. Ms. Taitano, are you still there?
What this bill is saying, that the sources is coming from our septic tanks. The capacity to
Ms. Taitano, if you can at least pull over and so we can get a steady connection.
Like, okay, this might be the last time this thing was it was collected here on this date and
Okay, unfortunately, I think Ms. Taitano, you're on the road. We lost connection. Turn back on, unmute, please, and let's see. And if you can pull over, we appreciate it, so you can have a steady communication line.
sounds good.
We're connecting with everything else. We'll have to reconnect with you. And we'll probably get you back on December 9th. Ms. Patricia Blas, you'd be the last one, and then we're gonna recess this hearing until December 9th. Ms. Blas, let's try you again one more time. Unmute, ma'am. We're connecting with everything else. We'll have to reconnect with you. Ms. Blas? We'll get you back on December 9th. Ms. Patricia Blas should be the last one, and then we're gonna recess this hearing until December 9th. Ms. Blas, let's try you again one more time.
Okay, half a day. My name is Patricia Marie Taituno Blas. I am from the village of Vigigo. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Blas, we can hear
Okay.
you well. Go ahead, please. Just continue. You need to turn off your TV or whatever radio you have on because we're getting back feed from that.
Okay.
I am from the village of Vigigo. Can you hear me well?
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good now. Go for it.
Okay, I'm in total opposition to the passage of Bill 404-35. Okay, maybe we will turn my mom's listening on YouTube. Okay. Actually, I am total opposition of passage of Bill 404-35. I need a shout out. Do not take our God-given right to live and thrive on our lands. Lands passed down through the generations. How will this Bill 404 affect me? How will this Bill 404 affect us as a people? To answer such a question is mind-boggling. Okay, sorry. I need to chill out here. Okay, relax. Okay, like many other landowners, we inherited this properties from our parents who have gotten these properties from their parents and generations back. The natural resources that we need to protect is the family connections. We need to be near each other. Like this COVID, it's tearing families apart. We have to find ways to be close yet distant. Before COVID, I lived in Tumon for over almost 2 years. COVID came, I moved on my property right next to my mom. I do not have infrastructure. And I worked very hard to get to where I'm at today. I went to college, having this dream since early 20s to build a house on my land. And one day it's going to be passed down to my children and my children's children. And the life that we live on our land means everything to us. Right now, my mom is 82 years old or 82 years young. I moved here next to her from the property that was given to her from her mother. I am being able to be with my mom, to stay with her, to be with her, and to live life to the fullest as we can. Anyhow, I believe that the natural resources of the water is just as important as the life that we live. And we need the water. But yet, at the same time, I am proposing that other alternatives be found instead of taking this Bill 404, passing it, and then we don't know what's going to happen next. We're just not going to be able to build a house. That is life-threatening to me. That would be life-threatening to sustain the culture of us being interdependent. We need each other. And our families have passed this down through the generations, our lands, and our ability to sustain our life. And I hope that this bill does not pass. Find other alternative ways. And we do not want to be able to live on our land and have bad water that's going to affect us. I want that protected too, Hopefully, we know how to collect rainwater, but right now we have all these systems in place. And I hope that as leaders, please do not vote for Bill 404-35. Protect our natural resources and our people to continue to commute, to live interdependently. And as part of the solution, we could be all part of the solution, educating us on how the water is being affected by nitrate. If it's because of the way we farm, the erosion of the leaves to the septic tank. It's like right now things are being studied. We need factual evidence to go to that drastic measure of passing 404 and stopping us from having a septic tank. We will need that. So please, please consider the people. We don't need to be threatened again to lose our lands and our ability to live on our lands. And money shouldn't have to buy that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blas. Must be either Cueto or Lucas Apanzigu.
Lucas Santugun.
Lucas, okay.
Lucas
Okay.
and Tugun.
Tugung, okay, Santa Rosa Blas. All right,
All the way.
you know what? I have a few more minutes. I'm communicating with the legislature to find out if we're ready to go back in session. But we're going to try to go back to Ms. Miller, Donna Miller. Can you pull over and just pause for a second, and then we can get you back on and say you can finish your testimony, ma'am. If you could, please, because we can see you're still moving.
Hi, sorry, I wasn't driving. I have a driver. But I understand it's
Must be a title, but no problem.
okay. So I am very much against this bill. I'm against and this COVID obviously is making it harder for me to stay in a position that allows me to be able to earn money to be able to build. Now, my property doesn't have any water or power lines nearby. We are far from the nearest sewage line, which is way off. I don't have the capital to be able to build a sewage line into my property. The only way that I'm going to be able to do that is to have a septic tank and a leaching field and all of that. This is property given to me by my father, so that I can literally not have to pay a developer to build a house and I pay them mortgage for it. You know, we have a very good filtration system on northern Guam. It's our limestone. It does a perfect job. We don't have to worry about earthquakes that would break pipelines right now that have affected currently our sewage system right now that exists. And it has already contaminated our aquifer, and it continues to do that. And now we're going to be forced by this bill to make sure we hook up to a sewage system that isn't even well maintained. And I think as senators, I really hope that you guys find a better focus on where we can find an alternative that doesn't tie the hands of local owners. I don't want to be like Hawaii. I don't want to be where it's going to take some foreigner to come in with big money to come here and put up a house on my own property, and then I would have to pay them to do that. And I know there's no way that I could afford it. It's important that you fight for us, Senator. I really believe that you have that in you to really stand up for our people. How many more people are going to be denied to live on their own property? I can't afford to live constantly paying rent on properties that have. Thank God, my sewage that I live on a property right now that the owners have a septic tank. And I learned that I pay less water because I have a septic tank. All my friends who are connected to a sewage line are paying twice as much water than I am. How can that be? If the sewage system that is here currently is cheaper and better for our people, why is it that I don't have to worry about that? So I think there needs to be substantial data that needs to be done. And we have a lot of intelligent people that are available to the legislature and to anyone else, and that we can actually participate in these studies and show how septic tanks really right now is not the ideal, but it's better than the current system where actual wastewater is going directly into the aquifer. And GWA knows this. All the weary scientists know this. The data on that is real. What they don't have data on is really what is the effect of septic tanks on the aquifer. As high as we are in GIGO, it has to, if there's a crack in our septic tank, it has to go through how many feet of limestone before that actually happens. So I think there needs to be real studies done. And before you hold us hostage to somebody else's understanding without any data, you have to protect the people, protect our land, protect the water, but use us also so that we can have that actual data. We can't just assume that it's going to happen. And, you know, I have to get back to my pest survey for Guam because that's my job, to protect our island from the pest survey, from the invasive species. So I want you to protect us from these bills that are not finding solution for our sewage issues, the current issues, and the maintenance of those issues. So please, please, do your best to make sure that this bill is tabled. We do more studies. We come up with a real bill that's going to address the maintenance of the current sewage system, and a better way to set up the sewage issues on the island, especially over GIGO. Thank you very much, Senator.
All right, thank you, Ms. Taitano. Folks, we are gonna recess. The legislature is gonna go into session to vote. We will come back, recess on this bill and come back on December 9th at 5 p.m. Everyone that's on the screen or on this Zoom will be invited back. Okay? You'll all be invited back, and yes, we will try to do the best we can to get as much information as we can. I live in GIGO. I know what the Taitano family feels like. I'm a Taitano. Okay, so let's do what we can to take care of all our people. We will now recess. Stay safe. December 9th. Remember, December 9th at 5 p.m. Stay safe. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Practice social distancing. And please be careful. Enjoy your day. Thank you.